One of the things that I noticed after running the agency for the past, 10, 12 years, what was our work like in the sense that was it press, was it outdoor, was it found that nearly 70% of the work that we did in the last year was for digital. So obviously that shift has happened. I don't know if too much has changed in the way we work. Maybe the technology has come in a much bigger way. Do you think this is just the trappings of how this entire business is now evolving? Do you think there's a change otherwise?
Tectonic shifts have taken place, I think. When it started, the medium was a single source, stable one. If you're talking about for the moment, TV, the visual medium for a minute, or the moving medium, or the whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you had at a certain point only one Doordarshan. Anywhere in India, it was the same channel.
You're
Some
free
of
to
these
see it.
TVs had 12 buttons just for show. You pressed any of them, they showed you the same channel. And even in the 90s, when the so called star people came over and all that, it was just an
Hmm.
addition of four channels. Therefore, from an advertising supply as well as consuming point of view, the channels if were very limited, very few, and therefore the audience was more homogeneous. In the sense, it ended up making the audience homogeneous because everybody was looking at the same thing. Therefore,
Yeah.
something called a shared culture was willy nilly developing, not because the Punjabi was very much like the Kannadiga or something, but we were all ultimately watching the same cricket matches on the one hand and the same stuff that the TV boxes were turning out. So therefore,
Hmm.
if Mahabharat was watched by millions all over India and taxis came to a standstill and there were empty roads in so many cities, that was the only choice you had, really speaking. At that time, whenever it was 10:30 in the morning to 11:30 in the morning, it was that, or there was Bunyad, or there was something else, and therefore, the whole nation basically watched the same thing. Therefore, from a brand perspective, I think it was kind of a very easy choice to make from media planning point of view, and from a very simple supply and consumer point of view. The world was simpler. Everybody was watching
Yeah.
the same thing, and therefore the ads were sitting on the back of the stuff that everybody saw. So people used to discuss shows with each other when they met socially, their relatives and friends, and as people are sitting down and people saw the people's living rooms, because the everybody was watching really the same thing. Therefore, that was easily discussable, and therefore it was part of everyone's lives. So I think it was pretty much of a no-brainer for a agency or a client to say that, hey, I must be in these living rooms, in these
Present in
thousands
these
and
living
millions of
rooms. Yeah.
living rooms, as people watching TVs and discussing TV programs, including ads with each other. Hey, did you see the ad with the black coffee for that cell phone and this and that? Was something that everybody talked about, kind of stuff. We now call that kind of an event viral because it is assumed to be a rare thing that happens, and therefore when something gets out of hand kind of viewership, you're saying it went viral, meaning it was supposed to reach 300 people, but man, it
so,
reached 300 million people, whereas
so
previously everything was viral.
that's a great definition, Narayan, because these days it's so rare for something to go viral, or at least compared to, like, you had entire episodes and entire programs that went viral for. And like you were saying, if a client had the money to advertise on either Ramayana or Mahabharata, you covered 87 or 88% of the TV watching public in India. Did you think it was a time driven, less deadlines, or simply that the deadlines were so far apart that 1 week, for example, to get ready? Because if you had to capsule a TV commercial, then you had to submit it to the channel about a week in advance so that they'd go through all the roles and stuff like that. Whereas now it's like, okay, you want to get this thing, and instantly you're on, you're there. So, do you think mentally there is a change in having to cater to a much wider cross section of people for the same brand?
To continue with what I was saying, if there was only that one medium primarily for everybody to watch and have a shared experience, then as an advertiser, you had just that opening to cover, really speaking. Now, once you say that there are many, many things that many, many people in different age groups, different places, different parts of India, different languages are watching, then it becomes a bit of a nightmare, because then it's the same single brand, can it still mean the same thing to to this Punjabi guy who's about to get married, as much as it is meant to be for the Bengali guy who's 48 years old? And
Right.
now we don't know for sure, and therefore this perennial segmentation of audiences into, oh, but I'm looking at these kind of people with these kind of media habits and all that, has become a reality now. That is one part of it. And therefore the difficulty of the task of having to come up with ideas is that much more multiple faced. And yet you have to stand for a brand which has to probably at the end of it mean the same thing to everybody somehow. Now
Yeah.
previously the somehow was not there.
Not
If you did
required.
a good job, it meant it the same thing to everybody. But now your way of talking to that guy from Punjab, and your way of talking to that Gujarat guy and to somebody else, and what exactly to say, because this guy consumes social media like this, but the other guy is an Instagram guy, then there are changes that willy-nilly are forced upon you as a creator and an advertiser. That is one part of it. The difficulty of creating stuff for what seems to have become this fragmented media that has
Audience.
been
Yeah.
thrust upon us is one part of it. The second part of it is what you were saying is, has the time to develop stuff become also accelerated? And
Yes.
I it has, for the simple reason, previously, yes, you had your lead times for Doordarshan, you had your times and all that, but at the end of the day, you knew, at least for big brands, if you did that 30-second commercial with its edits, at the end of the day, you knew as an agency that you just needed to create that one thing, and after that you're getting your commission, and therefore you could handle multiple clients with fewer campaigns. And since the same audience was being exposed, there was a certain kind of even a school of thought that encouraged repeatability to the same audience. In fact, I have known an Henkel client long ago talking to me in when he was in India, saying that in Germany they had a saying in the Henkel group. They made detergents and stuff, and they said that when our advertising gets boring, it starts working. Now the thing is, and therefore but there are many subscribers to the school of thought,
Yeah.
Unilevers and P&G, and among the
Right.
notable ones of that
Right.
time, who really believed that your opinion on whether somebody liked something or not didn't count. All that changed later, but there was a certain period of time when there was that kind of a thing that said that never mind if people like it or not, but as long as it's effective, run it, run it, run it. I mean, that's how this washing powder Nirma for a certain audience was pumped in over so many years. Or Vico Vajradanti stared at you from your TV and every movie that you went and all that. Therefore, the work needed to create it was actually, you had ample time to create, and you had ample time to sit back, relax, don't do anything about it, wait for the results to come in, and meanwhile think about something else, and the next year would roll around, kind of stuff,
Right.
and there would be
Right.
research. And now we are not only talking about multiple fragmented audiences, we are also talking about, all of us get bored, or at least we assume that the audience gets extremely bored. How can I run the same thing? That Instagram ad has been running for one whole week. Yeah, come on, let's do something. Now, therefore,
Yeah.
this is additional pressure that
Yeah.
somehow you have to be on brand, on strategy, so to speak, and yet the need to create distinct pieces of work at a faster and faster rate. That's where it
Yeah.
is going. I mean, hats off to the people who are doing it successfully or something like that. But you are actually, in my mind, just statistically, you must have a highly decreased chances of hitting the bullseye, because simply you are shooting a moving target, and you're saying, I'll come at you again and again and again, hoping that one of the 17 tries you may like something I like, kind of a stuff is
Yeah.
where it
Yeah.
seems to be at. So it is far more difficult to be
And
an agency today.
here's the thing, Naren. A whole lot of people say that, compared to, let's say, in the 80s and 90s, if you were exposed to about 300 ads a day, I mean, I'm saying a random number. Today, you're exposed to somewhere around 30,000 or 3,000, because it's there on your phone and you're looking at it for several hours a day. And if you remember the early part of, when ads came on smartphones, they said this is a personal medium. So somehow I think we've gone into the phone, and it takes over your browser, it takes over your, the app just cuts into. the same kind of interruption. Though digital prefers to say we do targeted advertising, whereas the other thing was interruption. Traditional was interruption, digital is targeted. But my point is that if you're targeting a person, if you're shooting them every 2 seconds with an ad, where is the point of getting through? As the amount of advertising increases, our ability to screen out advertising gets better. So I think even the thumb scroll is actually a something that the body has worked. It acts as a filter to say, no, don't look at this. No, this is not important. It just goes past. So all that creative, which has been, it has gone from simple to simplistic in order to get that one keyword or whatever it is to try and get a person's attention and then try and draw them in, which seems counterproductive. It's like you're being assaulted by, and in which case, how does the creative get better? Because no matter what you try, if speed overtakes every other consideration, to a large extent, there are four people watching television and there are four people going through the mobile phone as well. So the attention is being distributed between what is happening on television and what is happening on their phones. They're answering messages, they're looking through some trailers, whatever it is. So I think it's a very different beast from how families used to sit, because then it was a family gathering where the only interruption was food. I'm surprised at how quickly this personal medium, which is a smartphone, has completely taken over. Do people working in the digital business see this, or are they saying that that is the way the business is, so I've got to adapt? Because programmatic is like following you all over the place. You happen to click on one ad for a shoe or something, that shoe follows you through every channel and every little bit that you're going through. And sometimes, it's like this annoying salesman who, when you walk into a shop, will come and, sir, do you want something? Sir, can I get you something? Sir, pretending to be helpful, but intending you to buy something and get the hell out of here because I want to concentrate on the next one.
We don't have much of a social media anymore. Strangely, in an age that talks about social media, it is actually
Yeah,
private media we are all consuming. TV is a very good example, and radio in an earlier time, when before the days of TV, whoever might was old enough then used to, like when we see old movies and all that, and people are listening to World War II broadcasts or Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru talking about this, that, and the other. Families
yeah,
apparently used to gather around the radio to listen together, and that's
yeah,
how the freedom movement was born, etc., and all that, because people were sitting and listening, even in villages, very much like outside of TV shops. To this day, there are crowds of people watching a India Pakistan match at the same time. To my
yeah,
mind, that is social media. And ironically enough, what we call social media, which is Facebook and your Insta and your whatnot, is all being consumed one at a time. It's between me
yeah,
and my phone. You can be sitting right next to me with your phone, and I don't know what you're doing with that. We are not watching. We may occasionally share, hey, check this out kind of stuff, might happen here
yeah,
and there, but
yeah, yeah.
essentially, it is a very personal medium.
Right.
I'm talking to 10,000 people and I have to be successful 10,000 times. Whereas
Yeah,
previously I needed to be successful once and 10,000 people would all agree that, yeah, hey, I like it, I don't like it, whatever it was. I got a reaction.
yeah,
Now to
yeah,
manage 10,000 or maybe 100,000 multiple relationships is the game. So this one guy at a time model based within a personal media is an inevitable thing that we've brought upon ourselves. As I don't know
yeah,
who started it, but we are swallowing it, we are living it. Even the advertisers are still consumers of the same thing, much like advertisers. Then even the Tatas and the Birlas went home and watched TV, I presume, with their family. Like
yeah.
that, everybody uses their phone and their Instagram and their LinkedIn and their Facebook. Everybody uses that. For people like us coming from a slightly more homogeneous era,
Right.
uh, it is a difficult one to, it's a bewildering gap to traverse. Now, but if you
Absolutely.
are born in 2000 or 1998 and you're all of 24, 25 years old and stuff like that,
Yeah.
This is the one world, and what's these guys talking about?
Yeah, and what are the historians talking about? Exactly. And I remember, Narayan, the word template was something that I never heard in advertising in the early days. It was like, that you want to standardize the creative. So what happened? We first used to use new photographers who gave it their own interpretation. We went searching for models. We got the right models. We got the mood that we wanted. Today we have stock which is giving you millions of options, and you're trying to fit it into something that you believe is right. The photographer used to make good money. Now the stock agency is trying to ensure that when you search for a family or a tourist spot, or you start for a particular festival, everything has become a template which you need to fit. So we've got templates and bucket lists which have sort of taken over everything that used to be very different.
Yeah, see, on the template part of it, I think templates, by the use of a different word, have existed in a far simpler form
Right.
always. And we used to call it formula. So
Yeah.
formulaic advertising, put that
Yeah.
headline, put this thing logo on the
Yeah.
bottom
Yeah.
right, and there are so-called rules. There are ways
Right.
of doing things. A headline should
Right.
be no longer than 7 words, and much like we used to refer to even Bollywood films and Tollywood
Right.
and Collywood and whatnot as
Yeah.
the art films and the formula films kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And therefore, this act of creation was being reduced to a formula meant that you got dull to mediocre advertising. So therefore, this that equivalent of that in a more complex, intense form is what these templates are all about. Which
Right.
means it's basically telling you there are boss, everything has already been solved. There are ready-made solutions for these things. Why are you breaking your head? That is what formulas originally solved, and that is
Yeah.
what templates today to solve. So for the lazy mind, for the stressed out mind, for the mind that's scared, that is really worried or scared of original thoughts, these are comforting things. This nonsense was going on even then, and therefore, to my mind, this is a tech variant of the same thing that humans do to each other, which is say, let's find an easier, replicable way of doing things in an essentially creative field, which simply
Yeah.
means that unless I'm different, you're not going to take notice. Now, if enough people sort of get subversive about it and go under, and then they say that, listen, really, do we need to be all the different? This has worked for so many years. Why don't we do this already? And you
Yeah.
throw chat GPT in the mix. In addition to your image bank taking care of your images, you have chat GPT taking care of your copy. Then of course, I suppose you just come to the office and whistle a tune, talk to people and pat people on the head and go home or something. I don't know what goes on these days, if this is true.
Okay, so all of these templates, and like you said, the formula existed. So what you're saying essentially is that this has now got distilled into something which has become even more uh, what, technocratic, or is it?
Yeah, something even more easier, even
Huh.
more lazier, and even more at hand for you to freely use,
Yeah.
uh, and for you to easily, what shall I say, hide. Who is to
Hmm.
know that I used ChatGPT, for instance? I have a feeling that the mediocrity or even low quality people would be found out sooner or later, because you
Yeah.
can't sustain that. Today, you probably can hide for years. It looks like. So therefore, I don't think this is a thing. But having said that, there are a lot of things that go right. For example, the virality of things that happen now and then, they are brilliant, most of them at least.
Yeah.
So it is a different world in that sense.